Good morning, friends. It is good to be here with you all this morning. Thanks for joining us here at Journey Home Meditation for the morning sit. Yeah. I think that's about all I have to say about that. I don't really know where these ideas of what wisdom is comes from, but you hear this sometimes, right? We hear these notions that there are wise people, right? And it's odd to me because it sounds as if it's an objective word, like if we want to see that as something that a person is, this person is very wise, right? These teachings are very wise, but I'm curious because it's I think it's more that wisdom is not from the speaker. I don't think that wisdom comes from the person speaking or even from the teaching. I think that wisdom is heard, not spoken. And wisdom is in the student, not in the teacher. I know that sounds very, that could sound backwards and that could sound pompous, but what I mean by that is, well, before I get into what I mean by things, let's have a little bit of tea. And remember, it doesn't matter what we mean. It doesn't matter what we believe. It matters what we're willing to question and how we listen. Well, that is delicious. So I guess what I've been thinking about this morning, and it's something I've talked about in the past, and it's something I think about a lot actually, is this notion that wisdom is something external of us, right? That there's some secret that the universe keeps from you until you're valuable enough to hear it. And that secret is kind of reserved just for the blessed few or the lucky few who may just so happen to have a book to sell you or a program that's only $39.99 a month or whatever it may be. But I think that wisdom has a lot more to do with the person learning, the person who is observing, the person who is listening and watching, and also observing in that deeper sense of observation, the one that goes beyond the senses, beyond even the ability to think of or process a thought of the observation. That can get a little heady, but I think that wisdom is innate and it's internal, and it's a recognition of or a remembering of some deeper truth. And what I mean by that is you can hear, like, think of the last wise thing that you heard, the last thing that you heard or read that you were like, that is a lot of wisdom there. That's a lot of wisdom in that teaching. And it could even be a very simple teaching. It could be something as simple as it's funny when you want to think of something simple, it's quite difficult because your mind is trying to engage, and your mind its job is to complicate things. Its job is to confuse and conflate things. Um, but it could be a simple teaching, like even something like the golden rule, right? Um, treat others as you would be treated. Now, I've heard different iterations of that golden rule in my life, but they all come around to the same notion of simply just be kind and be gentle so that you can understand that the world is a kind and gentle place. Right? There's wisdom there, right? There's knowledge that can be applied. That's what wisdom is, applicable knowledge. Uh, there's things that some astrophysicist may say that it can sound very intelligent, right? And it is very intelligent, and it's there's a lot of knowledge there. But if I can't apply it in my life, I'm not going to say what a wise man. you know? But as soon as I can find a teaching and apply it into my life, that becomes wisdom. But here's the crux that I come to with that is, if it were objectively wise, then I would have gotten it the first time. I would have been able to apply it into my life, and that would have been that. So I believe that wisdom is this encounter with the familiar. Wisdom is this recognition and maybe even a surrender to a deeper truth. And that has to come from the observer, right? That has to be the moment that we relent our complicating mind into a simple truth. We relent to that simple truth and we say, okay, I'm I'm done confusing my world, trying to figure it out. I'm ready to just accept the simplicity and beauty of this moment. And that becomes wisdom, just like that. When we hear a teaching that takes us into that quintessential self, that distilled and refined, cut away all of the fat. Like this is the choice piece of the teaching, and it becomes so simple. That's when we say this is a wise teacher. So much wisdom. But we'd never really say this is a wise student. And I was always curious about that, because I could read that same thing on 1,000 bumper stickers. A really simple example is "Be here now." Right? This is it's such a simple phrase. It's such a sometimes exploited phrase. It sounds like a directive. It sounds like an order. But really, this is the simple phrase of "Be here now." Simply brings you into this understanding of the moment. Now, you can hear that phrase 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. You could read it on every bumper sticker of every Volkswagen or Prius that you see in Ashland, Oregon. It doesn't matter where it is, you are hearing that information. It's only wisdom when you can apply it to your experience. It only becomes wisdom to you. It only sounds wise when it's counsel that you can relate to. So the wisdom is from the student. So when you're hearing a wise teaching from someone, it's best to not read too much into the personality of the teacher, because we can get into these binds where we start to attach and connect to personalities or reject personalities and lose the value of our own wisdom. Meaning, if we reject the teacher, we reject the teaching sometimes, right? It's that old saying, the baby with the bathwater, which I really don't understand that turn of phrase. Uh, of course, we don't want to throw out a human child when we dump out the bathwater. but I think it's, instead of don't shoot the messenger, don't shoot the message. You know, don't get so caught up in who you think you are and who you think this person is that you start to miss the valuable wisdom of the experience that you're having. That's what it comes down to for me, is sometimes I can get so stuck in my judgments of others and my condemnation of others that I forget that that other is my teacher in this moment and I am the student. And if I am outright rejecting that experience as somehow being wrong or being out of place or worthless or a waste of my time, then it's myself that is rejecting wisdom. I'm just not relating to it yet. And this isn't to say that you have to engage and allow every single relationship that you have to be on the same playing field. Now that's some seventh level monkism there. I'm not there. That's holy man stuff. Uh, but what I am saying is, before I start to walk down that path of separation, of the assumption that people and places and experiences are only here for my pleasure, or are only here for my comfort, or are only here for my benefit in a way that's exploitative, um, then I'm losing the wisdom of the experience of discomfort. I'm losing the wisdom of the experience of struggle, um, of resistance. What is this? What is this resistance inside of me? What is this rejection? What is this for? And if we can ask the questions, if we can continue to ask the questions, but observe from a place not of only processing in the logical mind, but also sitting in stillness with what arrives. That's when the student relates with wisdom, right? That's when we can relate with the simplest teaching available, the simplest thing. Because having all of this esoteric knowledge is fun, it's entertaining, it's a bit pompous. Books and books and books full of all of this knowledge can be a decent enough way to spend your day, right? But when we start confusing the complex knowledge for the simplistic wisdom of experience and relation, that's when we start to separate ourselves. We separate ourselves. And we use phrases like, well, before I was awake, or I used to be a lot like that. Oh, okay. So I guess this contemplation on what wisdom is just to remind myself It doesn't matter what you think you know. If you can't apply it in the simplest of terms, then it's only a distractive piece of fluff. And distractions can be okay. We decorate our lives with beautiful distractions. But when we can see that distractive beauty and sit with it until its presence actually arrives, and we can sit with whatever it is that arrives in that moment, that's when these beautiful distractions become magnetic attractions to something older, deeper, wider, something more expansive, something far more expansive. I remember sitting in darshan at a temple in Tucson, Arizona, and it was a really simple darshan, which is when you sit with the deities, you sit with and in the presence of the the teacher, as it is. You know, this darshan was simply sitting with the murtis of Krishna and Radhe, and I was sitting next to a devotee who had been a devotee for 40 plus years of her life. And we were sitting in silence and just um, finding our stillness with this overwhelming beauty at the mandir, right? At the temple, at the altar of our devotion. An altar is an altar of devotion. It's not anything more than that until the devotee opens themselves to the experience of the divinity of everything. That's important. But back to the story. I'm sitting with this devotee, and she'd been a devotee for some time, 35, 40 years, something like that, longer than I had been alive at that point. And so she's done this probably tens of thousands of times. Probably sat in front of an altar, sat in front of the mandir, um, gazing upon Radhe and Krishna in wonder and beauty, right, and joy. And she knows all of the Sanskrit. She knows all of the Srimad Bhagavatam verses that she could probably quote um, from memory. She's familiar with the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. She knows Srila Prabhupada's purports. She's very knowledgeable, right? Extremely knowledgeable. She's been the mother of this particular temple for a long time, seen it all. And as we're sitting in this still moment, in this silent space, she just very quietly starts to whisper her mantra aloud. She had been reciting. She had her mala in her bead bag, and she had been reciting, her recitations, chanting her rounds, probably for some time. But she just very quietly started saying, "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare." And as she's whispering very gently this mantra over and over again, I look to her and tears are just streaming from her eyes. And she is just as beautiful in that moment as Radhe Krishna is on the altar, right? She's just as beautiful. And I don't know if it was the smell of camphor burning in the air or what it was, but tears came to my eyes as I'm watching this devotee engaging in one of the most simple and beautiful of interactions. And even after 40 years or however long it had been, she was weeping like a newborn, right? She's seeing this anew for the first time and relating to it on a deep way, almost like embracing a parent after a long time, or imagine what it would be like when you thought you had lost someone that you love and then they arrive at your door. That simple beauty, that ineffable thing that there was no description for what she was feeling in that moment as she connected on this deep level. And that to me translates all of the knowledge. It bypasses all of the knowledge that she might be holding of all of the teachings. It bypasses all of that right away and goes directly to the wisdom. And the wisdom is hers. The wisdom of gazing upon that which she is devoted to. This beauty, this thing that's beyond time. Sitting there in stillness and weeping. Yeah, that was amazing. And that, as excited as I get about the intellectualism of everything, about how clever and funny and tricky we can all be with ourselves, when it comes down to it in that moment, that is the wisest love. That's the wisest love. To be new in each moment. And to know in your newness that you are older than all of this. It's a homecoming. It's coming home. And it doesn't just happen at the altar with Krishna Radhe. It can happen so many times in our day if we can just take that breath together. Just take that breath. You know, any moment that you can where you can allow the chatter of the mind telling you who you are and who they are and who we are, if you can let that just go away. Just go away. And sit with whatever it is that arrives. You'll find the deepest wisdom. That is not a money back guarantee. But it's a good way to start. It's a good start. But I think I've probably rambled on about these things long enough this morning. Yeah, I guess what I'd really like to do is take a few breaths and some stillness in this moment. So, if you'd like to join me, we're going to begin by finding our meditation posture. And that meditation posture is a place of balance in our bodies. And it's the space where our thoughts can come away from what it is we are thinking about, what it is we hope to experience, and become at rest in this body. See, in yoga, a position is called an asana. And I was taught that asana translates to seat. And so when we are in our asana, we are the seat. And if I'm the seat, then who is sitting here? Right? If my body is the seat, and then my mind becomes the seat, and my emotional body becomes a seat, this is a place for holding that which will arrive. So let's take a moment to hold what's going to arrive for us. And it all just takes place in a breath. So, seated with your feet to the floor, if you're in a chair as I am, or if you're on a rug or pillow or mat on the ground, find a comfortable position to hold yourself in stillness just for a bit. And we'll begin to breathe in through the nose, expanding the belly, and release. Let your shoulders relax. Bring the shoulder blades together just slightly in the back, opening the chest and opening the heart. Relax the neck and the jaw, the eyes and the eyebrow. Relax the hands, the lower back, legs and feet. Begin to experience what is arriving for you with each in-breath as the breath moves in and through the body. You can stay with this breath as long as you'd like. Don't get stuck in the witness. See what it is to arrive with the experience you're having. To change from acquiring information to remembering how you are related right now. This is an act of remembrance. and let your breath be an act of devotion. Thanks for joining this morning on the journey home. I'd love to be in contact with you, so feel free to send me a message. journeyhomemeditation@gmail.com. Let's talk about what we're finding in these practices in our own bodies and how applying ourselves to the devotion of these practices has affected our lives and the way we relate to the world. Let's share with each other so that we can find our internal wisdom together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hariom.